My name is Shanielle McLeod. I am the founder of Clean Slate, first Clean Slate Milwaukee, and now Clean Slate Wisconsin. So we've grown. We've grown to a statewide organization, and soon to be a national organization. Clean Slate is a second chance organization for men and women that have made mistakes in their past, paid their debts to society, and want nothing more than to be self-sufficient. Since 2012, we have helped more than 2,000 people get their records expunged, actually closer to now 2,500 people get their records expunged, both misdemeanor, felony, and dismissed cases. And I don't think a lot of people think about the dismissed cases, the cases that were never prosecuted, cases that people were found now guilty of, but it's still on their records. So we have been doing a really great job of removing the barriers to employment, housing, higher education, and all the other restrictions that comes along with having a court criminal conviction. I would like to say, I don't like to say the word criminal because people are not criminals. You know, some people are criminals, but unfortunately, everyone, just because you've been arrested, you know, you're thrown into the box with other people that may have had a lot more serious crimes than yours, but you still have the same penalties. And when I say penalties, I mean civil penalties. And so I am very, very, very honored to be working with the Wisconsin Pardon Advisory Board, as well as Anthony Cooper from Nehemiah Project. Is it Project Nehemiah?
No, actually, we're Nehemiah Center for Urban Leadership. There's a Nehemiah Project, I believe, in Milwaukee, and we're two separate organizations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, and I hear a lot of great work that they're doing there in Madison, and they're also reentry. So we're all reentry, and our goal is to make sure that when people return from our incarceration system, that they never return. You know, I mean, return back to the system. And so I am, like I said, very honored to be joined by our Pardon Advisory Board to do a couple things, clear up the misconceptions. You know, what's the difference between a pardon and an expungement? You don't understand how many times I hear that. So we have some frequently asked questions that I've heard 1,000 times, probably literally. And so I would love for the board to chime in and just, you know, just give some clarity and on the process and the criteria. I understand you guys, and I just wanted to put it out there that these very delightful people are not able to tell you if you are eligible. However, I do have the Pardon Advisory Board. So just to share the actual application, because it is on the front page of the application. On the front page of the pardon application, it has the criteria there for your review. So even though Ryan and Diane is not able to tell you yes or no, it's actually pretty simple. And it's a whole lot simpler than the expungement process. I will tell you that. There's a lot more people that's eligible to get their rights back than to get it removed from their record, which is not the same thing. So
I'm sorry, excuse me. So it's only giving me the option to make you into the host, not as a co-host. So it'll be coming back to you, so you'll know. All right.
Well, we can do, actually what I've done is I've actually put the Pardon Advisory Board attached, the pardon application attached to the chat. So anybody that wants the pardon application, chime into the chat and you can just upload the application right there and you'll have it in your own personal computers. And then towards the end, if you still want to see it, we can still show it to you. But so if we can just get started, Anthony, if you can just lead us with what you do, and then we can just pass it on to Diane and Ryan.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Anthony Cooper. I am the Vice President of Reentry Services and Strategic Partnerships for Nehemiah Center for Urban Leadership, where I work on quite a few different things from housing, advocacy, job development, placement. We do some other job training, as well as being able to we do mentorships. Also, I work with a few different entrepreneurial programs as well, mainly in the Madison area, but then also working on some additional things. At some point, plan on trying to do some more stuff in the Milwaukee area, Milwaukee and Racine area at some point here. Kind of working on some of those connections right now. But then also I wear several hats in Madison. Also, I'm the CEO for Focus Interruption, where I work with violence prevention and intervention strategies for Dane County. Yeah, I mean, again, you know, just kind of like how I said on the call, you know, I believe in being a community servant. You know, for some, I'm an open book, so you feel free to ask me anything. You know, the way, and even when I talk to the brothers, when I go into the prison systems and then kind of into the jails as well, you know, I look at it like this, you know, I used to serve the block in a different way, and now I'm doing it in a positive way. And, you know, and so, and being able to continue to do that through the rest of my life. I've been home now almost probably, well, close to 21 years now. I think this will be the 21st year. Now, my conviction, it was, I used to sell drugs back in the day. You know, end up getting a blessing when I ended up going through boot camp. You know, I said, this was it. I was done, and stood with it. You know, started off from working. Actually, I was a pizza flipper at Papa John's Pizza. That was my first job, and continue to keep moving forward, but then also pulling other people alongside me as well. But of course, it's a choice, and just doing my best to be as positive as possible. To be honest, my whole guiding, like the work that I'm doing now was not my focus. My real work was me being a better father to my kids. Everything else came to me. I think I feel through God and to kind of, you know, balance my life out and allowed me to be able to help other people through that process. So I'll leave it at that. But ma'am, I don't know if you want to lay out the questions or.
I think we can, if it works for you, Shanielle, Diane and I can kind of tag team some of those questions that you sent us. So one, just thanks everybody. So my name is Ryan Nelsestuen, and I'm here with Diane Rains, and we both work for Governor Evers. So I'm his chief legal counsel, and Diane is one of our assistant legal counsels. So we're the governor's attorneys. And I also chair the Pardon Advisory Board. And so I'm really excited to be here because it's really good to talk with folks about getting them interested in the process, and also I'm excited about having you on here, Anthony, to hear how the process worked for you, just because it's good to see things from different perspectives. And so kind of big picture, what I am sure, Shanielle, you get a lot of these same questions yourself, like a lot of times, and we even get in the pardon hearings, but I think what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about the difference between a pardon and an expunction, because they are very different. And then we'll talk about a little bit about what rights you get if you are pardoned by Governor Evers. And then Diane's going to talk a little bit about the eligibility criteria, which is in that link. If you want to go onto the governor's website, there's a couple of really good documents on there if you want more information. One is there's a frequently asked questions, because just like how Shanielle, you mentioned, you've gotten bombarded with questions. We get a ton of the same questions over and over again. And so we put a lot of this information right on the governor's website. And then we also have the application on how to get it filled out. And we'll provide just some recommendations on that. Just so I think the biggest takeaway, if you have anything, is if you're eligible, apply as quickly as possible. That's the biggest thing. Do not sit on this. Do not wait, because right now it's May 2021. The governor's up for re-election next year. You know, we fully plan on, you know, the governor being re-elected and continuing this process, but nothing's guaranteed in life. And if there's somebody else, it's not guaranteed that next person will do pardons. So while historically every governor has exercised this responsibility, the last person didn't, and also Governor Evers is exercising this power at a drastically faster rate than any of his predecessors. So we are moving significantly faster, and we're always looking at ways to do it, even get more people pardoned to kind of right some of the wrongs that our criminal justice system has inflicted. And so that's just my takeaway: is don't sit on your hands, get this taken care of so you can be heard by the board as soon as possible. So in terms of just what a pardon expunction, so expunction cleans, removes it from your record. If you're interested in expunction, you need to talk to, Shanielle is a good resource. There's a number of clinics that do a really good job on this. Marquette Law School, for example, has a really good expunction and pardon clinic. But there's a lot of good groups out there that can help you with that. And as Shanielle said, it's absolutely right. It's Wisconsin, unfortunately, we have a very difficult process to get your criminal record expunged. It's too difficult, but that's just the state we're in. Hopefully we would, the governor supports making it easier and broader, but we have to get that through the legislature for that to happen. A pardon, by contrast, is solely up to the governor. He has a constitutional ability to do that. And the main thing it does is it restores certain civil rights. So once you've completed your sentence, you can already vote, but there are a number of restrictions on things you can't do. And so the main things that a pardon does is it allows you to possess a firearm, which you're now allowed to do as a felon. So it restores that right to be able to have a firearm. It allows you to run for public office. So like one of the things we hear a lot from people is, I was just talking to a guy yesterday, Diane and I, where, he helps out on a lot of campaigns down in Racine on school board races, but he can't be on the school board himself. And so if he gets pardoned, he would be able to be on the school board himself. He'd be able to be a lot more involved in trying to make changes in our state and in our country. It also allows you it helps a lot of folks with occupational permits. So for example, if a lot of people who want to become a registered nurse, getting a pardon is helpful with that especially, but there's a whole list of different occupations that if you get a pardon, it's going to help out. We've had a lot of folks who childcare is a really big thing where we see a lot of benefit from pardons. There's one woman in particular who we pardoned. The governor pardoned about 2 days before she was going to lose her childcare license. And because Governor Evers pardoned her, she was able to continue doing her job and operating a childcare center in Milwaukee. And so that's a really big one. It also allows people, if they're interested in becoming a law enforcement, in tribal law enforcement, or working as working for corrections as like a parole officer or agent, it helps you with that too. And then the final thing, which isn't a legal thing, but I think is actually, I would argue, is the biggest thing, is when you CCAP your name and your offense shows up, the very first thing says is you've been pardoned by the governor. And that, I think, is a really big thing, both emotionally. It's that official grant of forgiveness that, that this is no longer, while it may still show up on your record, you've been pardoned, your rights are restored, you're a full citizen. So those are the main things. Does anybody have questions about, so one question was, can you be pardoned and then go for expungement? Absolutely. Yeah, I'd say do both if you can. Yeah, I think that's a smart thing to do, because one of the things I do think a pardon does help with employment discrimination. We hear from a lot of folks who they shouldn't be denied for a job, but they still are illegally. And your only recourse is to file a complaint with the Equal Rights Division. Expungement is going to help you so it doesn't even show up. So while pardon, I think, is going to help a lot of people, and we hear from a lot of people who employers, if you've been pardoned, you can also travel to other countries, by the way. That's the other big thing I forgot to mention. A lot of folks want to go to Canada, they want to go to Mexico, they want to go other places. A pardon is going to help you with that. It also will help you in that job interview. So when you are asked about it, you can say, yep, I've been pardoned. But I would say that having the expungement, the more, the better that you can do. And so I think in terms of criteria, Diane, do you want to just do a quick rundown on what our current criteria are?
Yeah, absolutely. So if any of this is not clear, if you want to just go back over it, all of this information, I'll say again, is available on the website. If you just punch into your search engine, Evers pardon, it'll probably be the first hit that shows up. And you can go back over, in addition to these eligibility criteria that I'm going to go over, it'll also answer frequently asked questions. So it's pretty straightforward, as Shanielle introduced. And also, thank you, Shanielle, for having us. I really appreciate this opportunity. So it's just four criteria that you have to meet. The first one is that this has to be a Wisconsin felony conviction that we're talking about. And that really is just kind of the anchor. So specifically, we're not talking about a federal conviction. If you have a federal conviction, then you can be pardoned, but that would be from the President of the United States. The governor of Wisconsin can only pardon for Wisconsin convictions. So in this case, we are talking about felony convictions and not misdemeanor convictions. There are some cases in which a misdemeanor conviction could also be eligible if it's associated with that felony conviction. We're not talking about dismissed charges either. So it has to actually be charges that led to a conviction. And the last thing is, this one kind of confuses people, but this is different than a juvenile delinquency adjudication. Those cases are not under these criteria eligible for consideration for a pardon. So that's the first piece, is the Wisconsin felony conviction. The second one is that you have to have completed your sentence at least 5 years ago. So that means basically being off paper for 5 years, having finished every part of it that was ordered. That includes jail, prison, Huber release, probation, community service, parole, supervision, whatever the circumstances were that was ordered as your sentence, you have to be done with that for at least 5 years. That's the second one. The third one is that you can't have been convicted of another crime since completing this sentence. This does include out-of-state crimes. So let's say you moved out of Wisconsin, but were convicted of a crime in California. That may be disqualifying. It does not, however, include minor traffic violations, operating after revocation, operating with a suspended license, speeding tickets. These kinds of things are not included. You could have those and still be eligible for that felony conviction to be considered for a pardon. The other piece that I'll say about that is that it also won't disqualify you if you have other convictions, but you were convicted of those while you were still finishing your sentence. So let's say that while you're on probation for your felony conviction, you caught a misdemeanor charge of something unrelated. Because you were still serving that sentence, it's not within the range that would be disqualifying. So you could still be eligible on that one. I know that can be a little bit confusing for people. It depends on your discharge dates while you're still finishing your sentence. If you think you might be eligible though, we encourage you, send in all of your materials and we will be able to do a full assessment to make sure, we can check with the Department of Corrections to make sure that you are in fact eligible. And the final one is straightforward as well. You have to not be required to register as a sex offender. A couple of things that I want to say about those 4 criteria. The first is that right now we're not accepting waivers to any of them, so you really must meet all 4 of them. Another point that's important is that you don't actually have to be a United States citizen to apply for a pardon. Citizenship is not required for this process. Another frequent question that we get is, do I have to have an attorney to help me through this process? Not at all. Many people, in fact, I would say the majority of people who come through the pardons process are unrepresented. The process itself is quite straightforward. You find the application online, you can either fill it in on the computer or simply print it off and handwrite in your answers, send it in, and we'll correspond with you from there. You do not need an attorney, but you're certainly more than welcome to have one if you decide. And if you do decide, there are resources I know of, especially in Milwaukee, some legal organizations who have been helping pardon applications for months now and are familiar with the process and can help you through that. Ryan, if it's okay with you, I'll talk about what's needed to make a complete application.
Yep.
So like I said, you'll download the application from the internet. If you just plug in Evers Pardon, would be the first application. There's a giant box at the top that says, here's the application. There's a couple of pieces that you need to know about it. The first thing that is obviously going to be required for a complete application is that application form itself. Right. And we've tried to make it as simple and as understandable as possible. I know it still can be confusing because there's so many different pieces. So I'll start from the top, is the application form itself. Like I already said, you can type it, type it right into the fillable PDF form, or if that's, not how it's going to work best for you, you can print it off, you can handwrite it in. The space that we give you for answers sometimes is only about this much. So what plenty of people end up doing is attaching pages, filling in, whatever your story, however long your story takes, you can attach those pages. Another piece that I want to highlight for everyone is that it does have to be notarized. So a notary public is a person that notarizes documents. And in order to have something notarized, you'll typically go to this person and bring your ID. And they're going to basically verify that you are who you say you are, that the signature is, in fact, for this person claiming to be that person. I know at the Milwaukee County Courthouse, I think you can get documents notarized. So you can kind of maybe plan on doing that together when you go to pick up your court documents. Because another piece of the application that's required are 3 certified copies of court documents out of your court case. Now you'll need to get, for each conviction that you want pardoned, those 3 copies. Couple of notes on that. The first one is called the criminal complaint. That's basically the charging document that lists, what is alleged, what you are alleged to have done wrong. The second is the information, which is the official charging document for felonies. And the last one is the judgment of conviction. That was the document usually produced at sentencing that says these were the charges that were ultimately convicted, and this was the sentence either stayed or imposed, what have you. I want to let you know, be prepared, because most circuit courts charge per page for photocopies, and then they'll add an additional fee on that for the certification. Ordinary photocopies is just something like $1.25 per page. And then to certify it, the clerk will put a stamp, usually, on each page. And that stamp costs something like $5 each.
It's $5.
Yeah, so just be prepared to be able to pay those associated fees with the photocopying. Now, the last piece of the application is the notice forms. Part of your job as the applicant is to notify two parties who are interested in these kinds of pardon application proceedings. The first is the judge, who sentenced you in that case, and the second is the district attorney. Now, to satisfy your obligation in this process, all you have to do is mail those forms or drop them off in person, whatever suits you, at those 2 offices. So go to the circuit court, the courthouse where you were convicted. You can either talk with the clerk and see what is the designated place to get those forms to, or you can look up online where to mail the form. And the second one is basically the same thing, the district attorney's office. You don't have to worry about locating the exact person who had that role when you were convicted. Sometimes these convictions were decades ago, and that person who is serving in that role has long moved on from that position. So in order to satisfy your job, all you have to do is serve that notice to the office. And at that point, they can decide if they want to provide input to us or not. After you've gotten all of those sort of integral pieces, you have a complete application. After that, if you want, you can provide supplemental materials as you see fit. Sometimes people like to include letters of support from community members, from family members, from religious figures, from law enforcement. Whatever you think is fitting for your circumstances, you can provide that. Another thing that people frequently include is copies of certificates of achievements that they've had, a copy of degrees that they've attained. Sometimes there are even newspaper articles that either talk about the crime itself or that talk about some major achievements that the applicant has had over the course of their life. So those things really are supplemental. It's not required, but if you feel it's fitting in your circumstances, you can submit all of those forms. I guess the last piece that I'll say about a complete application is that you don't have to have everything in one envelope ready to go. It's not just one, you don't just get one shot at this. As soon as you send in the application, we can begin preparing your file. And then all the way up to just shortly before the hearing, if you are eligible, if you do have a complete application, if you do pass background checks and can be scheduled for a hearing, you can keep adding things. So if, we understand that this process takes a long time. So in that time period, maybe your circumstances have changed. Maybe you've made new friends who you want to have write letters on your behalf. All of these things, you can still append things to your application effectively.
And you brought up something that's really important of everything. Everything was really important, but one thing that I'm glad that you touched on is that the because a lot of these convictions were, like you said, decades ago, that same district attorney or that judge is no longer there. So still turn it into, like you said, that district attorney's office or that same judge's branch. And it has to be in the county and where you were convicted. So for example, if it's the Racine case, it has to go back to the Racine County Court. If it was in Dane County, so on, Milwaukee, so on. So the same judge that, you know, in the same courthouse where it all happened is where it's the same courthouse you have to double back to get those.
That's exactly right. And if I can jump in with one more thing that you reminded me of, in some of these cases, we're talking about very old records. The courthouse may not even have records anymore for some of these cases. In order to satisfy your role in filling out your application to the best of your ability, if the courthouse has destroyed the records, we're not going to hold you responsible for that. What we need you to do in that case is have the clerk of the courthouse let us know. This case was from too long ago. We've destroyed the records. We can't find the records, whatever the case may be. We just need something from the courthouse in writing to verify that fact.
So sometimes if a case is expunged prior to, this was a concern of John Barrett, our Milwaukee County Clerk of Courts. He was basically saying that if a case is expunged prior to getting it pardoned, it's very difficult to unseal those records. So that's a heads up for people that have had their records expunged or looking to have their records expunged, that it's probably faster to just go ahead and apply for the pardon, because like Ryan said before, do not sit on this. If you're looking to get a pardon, get the application out of the chat and start on it today, because we won't always have this governor. And I say it all the time, that my concern is if Governor Evers leave, that this opportunity can leave right with him. So if you're looking to get a pardon, now is the time. So can Ryan, either you or Diane, speak to the wait time? Because I know you guys were probably bombarded with applications, or probably had a caseload waiting on you when you took these positions, you know, just because the Pardon Advisory Board had been shut down for so many years. So can you just speak to the wait time, and once this application is complete and submitted, what is the wait time after that?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And that's why I said at the beginning, you know, apply right away. So right now we're looking at around 13 months from date of application to you being heard by the Pardon Advisory Board. We're meeting once a month right now. So just kind of give you some historical context. So we're right around 200 pardons so far under Governor Evers. By contrast, Governors Thompson, McCallum had about 262 pardons over a 15-year period. So we're going to hit more in 2 years than they did in 15 years. Governor Doyle had 300 in 8 years, so we'll beat that as well in under 3 years. But still, it's still a 13-month waiting period right now, because we have about 450 people who are eligible and waiting to be heard who've already applied. We have, so that's quite a few folks. So even hearing 25, 35 people a month, it kind of jumps into one of your other questions that you had, Shanielle, about, you know, upcoming changes or anything. We're constantly looking at how to improve this process and speed it up, because we know there's a lot of people who have earned a chance to get a pardon. We want to make sure they get heard and that Governor Evers can have the opportunity to grant a pardon. And so, one of the things we did recently is we went to monthly hearings. Previous governors would only have a hearing maybe once every 4 months. We went to monthly. We were doing every 6 weeks. Now we're doing monthly. We're looking at some other options to kind of speed things up as well, just to address that backlog. But when Governor Doyle left office, there were about 4,000 applications waiting to be heard. Governor Walker didn't act on it for 8 years. And so when you just add, 8 years of people not getting a pardon, 4,000 from Governor Doyle, you can see there's a pretty big demand, which is why, we're trying to move quickly, but it's why it's very important that you get your application in the queue so that we can hear from you.
Okay.
I had a quick question as far as for the 8,000, just to kind of make it clear also for the audience. So are you also going back to when Governor Doyle was in office, or, yeah, so so people won't get discouraged by the
Yep.
number, right? Because so then they know, like, hey, this is not only is this a time for you to get in, but then also I wouldn't even think about that. I shouldn't say don't
No,
think about 8,000, but just go forward
Yep.
and get the application in with the Evers.
If you apply, there's a very good chance you'll be heard from if you apply, but soon. But you need to apply soon. That's the bottom line. So this isn't something to wait, 2, 3, 4 months on. This is something to get taken care of. If you can get taken care of this month or next month, you'll be in better shape than if you risk waiting until like the end of summer. I'd be a little nervous if I was waiting until the end of summer.
Yes, so
Oh, go ahead.
it looked like Mr. Robert Stem has a question. So sir, can you please pose your question in the chat? And then we'll get to it. But Anthony wanted to speak to the process. And then I also wanted to ask a quick question. So what type of questions do you ask when someone comes before you? Like what can they expect? Like how can we get people ready? Because we do doc prep here and Clean Slate, as you guys already know. So we help people with the pardon process here, and they ask all the time, like, what are they going to ask me? So how can I prepare our clients and what type of questions, just so they can get mentally ready for it?
So I would say a couple of things. One is you can watch one of these hearings. They're all streaming live on YouTube. We're having one tomorrow. So if you want to see my face again, I don't know why you would, but if you do want to see my face again,
I didn't know that. Okay.
we stream all these online. That's the other big change we've done is because of COVID, we do these virtually on Zoom, just like this. And we're going to continue doing that even once we're all vaccinated. And the main reason for that is, one, it was difficult on our board members getting them all in Madison. One of the things we wanted to make sure when we put together this board is we wanted a very diverse board. We wanted a board that looked like Wisconsin. They don't all look like me. And we wanted to make sure that we had representation from around the state, but especially, our larger urban areas with, Madison, Milwaukee. And so it makes it easier for the board, but also we found it was a lot easier for applicants to just be able to do a Zoom call for an hour rather than having to hike over to Madison, find parking, pay for parking, wait around. So you can watch us tomorrow. You can watch us the second Friday of every single month. We have a pardon board hearing. And I think, Diane, if you could just put that link in there you go. You can just click on that link. This is why I hired Diane. It's a lot better than I am. You can watch us, but basically what I tell, when you come before us, I'll give you the exact same spiel that I do every single time, which is, thank you for joining us. And making time. I'll say thank you for your application materials. We've had an opportunity to read through them, but this is our opportunity to ask you a few questions. And then, but to begin things, I want to hear from you in your own words. I don't want to hear from your attorney if you have an attorney. And I'd actually say, while Diane said, you can have an attorney, sometimes it can be useful. I would not have an attorney with you. And in fact, attorneys have sunk a couple of applicants. In terms of, because we, as a board, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. And so basically, Diane will send you questions that we'll ask you ahead of time so you can prep. But we want you to be very candid. We want you to say, like, what led to your felony conviction? And it's using like me first language, like I did this, then this happened. I was convicted on this date, then I served this time. And then we want to hear how you turn things around. We want to hear what happened since then, and that's whether you had a family, that's whether you've struggled with jobs. We want to hear why you want a pardon. It can be as simple as, I want this weight off my shoulders, I want to be forgiven, to I want to be able to go to Canada, to, whatever the reason is. We want to hear from that, but just in your own words. And so usually you'll have about 5 to 10 minutes to talk to us, and then the board will ask questions. Again, it's really important to be candid and be just very forthcoming. We don't want you to relitigate your case on, my PD was terrible and the DA had it for me, and, they should have considered this. And, that's not the purpose of a pardon hearing. We're not here to determine that, yep, you were wrongfully convicted or you should have gotten a lesser sentence. We are here to find out why you should have earned a pardon. And that's, you know, this felony happened. This is what I did about it. And this is what I've done since then. That's what we want to hear from you in your own words. If you're not candid, and you'll see this in the hearings, we have a former judge, we have several attorneys, and they will start, and we have a couple of former public defenders, and they're going to dig into why you weren't being honest about it or candid. And so the important thing is be honest, be candid, be forthcoming, and just share your story, and you'll be just fine. You'll be absolutely just fine if you're straightforward about everything. Some of the questions are a little bit, you know, out of left field. You know, if you have a family, sometimes we want to know how your kids are doing or how it impacts them. If you've had, if you're shooting for a new job, we want to hear about that job. You know, it's really a personal, like, we want to know who you are as a person. And the members of the board are very thoughtful, they're caring, they really believe strongly in this process, and they want to hear from you and know who you are as a person. So I think that's the base thing. I don't know, Anthony, if that was your experience, because I wasn't at your board hearing.
Yeah, I would say definitely that was my experience, and you hit it right on the head as far as just being honest and straight to the point, and don't, you know, I mean, it's going to feel, I mean, and this is just me, you know, and I don't care about the time how long I've been home, but that was probably one of the most nervous. I felt more nervous there than I felt in any meeting that I've ever attended, right? Based on a simple fact, because again, this is a life-changing moment. It's okay, right? It's okay to be nervous, but also at the same time, be honest and, hey, this is, you know, but also because they'll give you the opportunity to talk about, like, hey, even though you put it on the application, but this is where you were then, but this is who you are now.
Yep.
Right. And being able to be straight to the point with that as well, because again, you have other people who are going to be there. They're going to, you know, for their partner hearing, but, you know, and I felt as though it wasn't as though I was being drilled by lawyers. It was people who wanted to know more about who I was and what my life was about. Going forward. And so I think that, you know, and it doesn't matter if you're a person who works in a community, or if it's a person who's I see it seems like a brother, maybe a truck driver, or whatever the case may be. I think that, you know, it's important for people to understand, hey, there's no such thing as a perfect person. It's about you. You change your life around. You want to make sure that, hey, that was the past. This is your future. And keep going forward from there. And you want to have even a better future for you and your family. If you do have, and family doesn't necessarily mean kids. It can be anyone who's connected to you. And those things are important.
Yeah, that's a good point, Anthony. I'd say the other thing is, you know, one of the things that could be a little nerve-wracking is we bunch people in groups. So ahead of time, you'll hear, like, you're going to be in the first group, which goes from 9 to 10:30, or you'll be in the next group, which goes from 10:30 to, you know, noon or whatever. And so you'll be sitting around in a meeting just like this. I mean, it looks exactly like this, where you're in Zoom, and, you know, you might get somebody who is shocking, like what they've been able to do. You know, they've gotten like 2-3 different degrees, and they started businesses, all this thing. And then there's other, you know, and that's a success, but there's other people, and we talk about it as a board in closed session, where it's just like, you know, we get to see the big picture of you. And success for some people is a bigger success. Just like we've had people who've been like, I've been sober for 5 years, and that is a huge success. So don't sell yourself short on any of it. Don't like get nervous about who comes before you. We really do look at you as an individual. And I think, you know, it's a pretty compassionate board. And just kind of the other thing I also tell people, what you'd hear when you're before the board, is I tell people just what the process is. So in order to get past the board, you have to have majority support from the board members present. So if we have 5 people, you need 3 people who say, yep, you know, Anthony should get pardoned. And then the pardon application goes to Governor Evers. He usually hears it about the next day or next week or 2 afterwards. Diane and I do brief him on it, but he actually watches the pardon board hearings. So because now that we're doing them on Zoom, this is one of his favorite parts of his job. And so late at night, he goes on YouTube and he watches the pardon board hearings. And then he'll make a decision on who he wants to pardon. And I think, you know, in terms of, we do have some like really rough numbers that Diane put together most people do get pardoned. So most people that do apply, probably about 2/3 get through both the Pardon Advisory Board and past the governor. The governor usually almost always goes along with the Pardon Advisory Board's recommendations, but there are a few isolated situations where the governor hasn't agreed with the board. But so you have about a 60, 2 out of 3 chance to get through. But I would say the people who haven't gotten through, it goes back to being candid about, what it was, how things happened and everything. I think that's fair, Diane.
I will also say that's fair as well. And know that something else is to put out there, and even in your application, they are going, sometimes it's like, all right, they're not going to look into this, or they're not going to look into that. They are looking into every single background that comes, right? So I want to make sure that people know that. So it's not, I don't need to put that much detail. Put the details that are in there, because then it can eliminate some of the questions that they may have, or whatever. So it allows those questions to kind of go a different way. Yeah, so talk about your work, talk about your family. I'm trying to think of, I think also, and then I think something that was asked to me is like, okay, so what is your next step in your life, right? At some point, do I want to run for office? Do I want to be able, because, and to be honest, some of the things that I really did not really think about, what is it to really own a legal firearm, right? What is it? I mean, never thought about going hunting a day in my life. I mean, just being honest with every single last one of you. Never had an inkling, a thought of that. But now it's like, maybe that's something I can enjoy with my sons, right? So those are the things that what we talk about now. And also just talk about the trajectory. If there are things that you feel that your conviction has stopped you from, this is the time to even talk about that, right? But then also go for it at the same time. It's something that Ryan had mentioned about. So I actually, a lot of people didn't know this until, even though the different type of work I was doing in the community, I actually went and tried to get my nursing degree. That was something I was like, all right, I started working in the healthcare as like an MA, not an MA assistant. It's like, all right, I know I can make more money if I get a nursing. Then I had to go through all the different background checks and all this other stuff or whatever. But of course, now I can do it. But at the same time, that was something that could have helped me from, again, I'm just a man trying to support my family, trying to do better. So those are the things that I think is very important for them to hear, and what that process look like for you as an individual.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for saying that. You actually took the words out of my mouth. But I just wanted to ask Ryan, and Diane is actually muted, just so you know, Anthony. If we can unmute her, because I wanted to ask, so just back to, not to beat a dead horse, but what would you say is a deal breaker? Because the criteria is pretty cut and dry. Either you qualify or you don't. There's no leniency either way. And I think the criteria is pretty open, especially if you are not on the sex offender registry and you've been done with your charge or your probation or whatever your sentence is, with no reoccurrences for 5 years, and you can apply. And so people ask, well, what are my chances? Even though you qualify, what are my chances? So would you say the biggest deal breaker would be just not being honest? Is that like the biggest thing? What is the reasons why people are turned away? Is it based on just not being honest, or what are some other factors?
Yeah, I think there's sometimes as people, I probably do a couple of categories where people haven't gotten past the board. Sometimes it's even if people are eligible, if you have a very violent underlying offense, where somebody, that one it's going to be, especially if it's more recent. So, you kind of think about all this as kind of being, as a board, we're kind of weighing everything. And so if you have a really violent offense from 1980, we're going to look at it different from 1990 versus 2000 versus 2010. And the farther back you go, the less concerned we're going to be about that. So sometimes having a really violent offense, especially if the victim, we do seek out victim input too. And so we're required to under Chapter 950 of the Wisconsin statutes and under the constitutional amendment that voters just enacted, the so-called Marsy's Law, we do gather victim input on that. And that has helped a number of people. We've had a couple of people, for example, we've had some OWI deaths where, for example, we had two teenagers. There's one case where the person driving was intoxicated, got in an accident, killed their best friend, and the victim's family wrote a very loving letter of support. We've had other where they've had a continuing relationship. We've had some victims write letters of support where they've had absolutely no contact, but they just hope that they're glad to hear that the person's doing well and have turned things around. And that's pushed people from us being no's to yeses. There's other times though, where victims have provided some really good context that wasn't apparent in the application, and it's pushed us from yeses to no's. So sometimes that can have an impact. Yeah, not being candid and trying to relitigate it just never goes well. And I get it. There's times where a lot of people, I think, with just how our criminal justice system works, it feels very unjust. A lot of people don't understand, in terms of just how the whole process goes, it can feel very unjust. And even if you did do something, how it turned out doesn't feel right. But again, this isn't the forum to fight and argue about that. So I think that can run people into trouble. And then I think the other thing is we do look at everything. So even charges that are dismissed, we do look into those. And sometimes there's certain things like child abuse cases, just always, I think you have child abuse cases. I think it's rare that those get beyond the board. So it is eligible. There is an opportunity, but it's rare to get child abuse cases through the board. Crimes involving children, just in general, it's really hard to get past the board on. It's not to say you shouldn't apply. There are some that have gotten through, but it's harder. I think that's a fair assessment, right, Diane?
Yeah, I think ultimately the board is looking for the fullest possible picture of each applicant.
Yeah.
So the more information generally, the better in making those determinations.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what happens is, so let's just say I get a potential candidate that wants his rights back, right? And so he has this one felony or two or whatever, and but he had a bad breakup, right? So he had a bad breakup, and the woman called the police on him many times, 6 or 7 dismissed cases, right? So I wanted to ask, so this is my own personal question. When we expunge the non-prosecuted cases from the CIB, when they come before you, are you guys still able to see those cases if they were expunged from the CIB?
Do you know that, Diane, on whether it clears it from DOJ?
I don't. I know that, I'm not sure about for a non-prosecuted case. If an ordinary case has been expunged, I believe that will still show up in the background checks that we do. But I can look into it and get you an answer on whether a non.
Right, because I tell people, I'm like, just because the case is dismissed don't mean it's not going to come back up. You know what I'm saying?
I think
it's going to come back up.
That's, I think, good advice, Shanielle. And I would say, if you're in that situation, because, right, I mean, a lot of people are in that situation where you have a messy breakup and there might be dismissed charges. We just want a really complete picture of what happened. And, we do ask for every single interaction that you've had with law enforcement. So we do want to hear about that, but that's something I'd be prepared to answer and be open and candid. Look, I was in a relationship. It was a really messy breakup. She called the police multiple times. There wasn't any substance to what she accused me of, which is why it was dismissed over and over again, but it is on my record. Just being really open and candid about that, I think is your best bet to deal with it. Because again, we want to know about, especially, domestic violence issues. They're really tricky and messy. I think sometimes, like, I have a concern, for example, if you have a disorderly conduct related to domestic violence, it's like, what actually happened? Because when I read a disorderly conduct charge, it can be anything. I mean, it can be me going around, stepping out of my office, starting to yell at people. That can be a disorderly conduct, or it can be, a domestic violence situation where they pled it down. And so we just want to know what happened. So again, we're focused on you, focused on your story, not just what that, charge is, or just what, that top line is. We're interested in the substance. So just be ready to talk about that and be open and honest about it.
If I had $1 for every time I heard someone say, oh, I just care about this one felony, I don't care about the other 9 misdemeanors.
Yeah.
or all of the, 8 or 9 dismissed cases that's there. I said, no, the whole record is going to come into play. You may be just concerned about this one case, but the whole entire record is going to come into play when it comes down. So it's best, and that's what I feel like is the benefit of our organization opposed to some other organizations, is that we have an in-house expungement service. So anything that can be expunged, we're going to expunge it, because you only have a certain amount of time. And so I would rather you spend that time talking about all the positive things that you've done since your conviction, all the positive things that you've gone back to work and you've stayed away from that life, you stayed away from those people, you've done a completely, you've done a 360, life, and you're not that person anymore. And so many people are not. So many people are not that person. They are so far removed from that life, and they just want a chance to be done with it. And that's what we help with. We help you be done with it. But it's a life. You had a past, and it's going to come back up, and you don't want to keep reliving that over. So if it's dismissed, it's best to just go ahead and get that stuff expunged, because like you just said, it's going to come back up. And people will get frustrated because they're going to say, well, I didn't come to talk about that case. I came to talk about this case. And they will say, oh no, we're talking about the whole thing.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something we see a lot. And, right, like, all of us have been really young and dumb at one point in our life. And sometimes, it takes some of us a few extra years to stop being young and dumb. And that's just something we see a lot, where you get, a guy from 17 until 27 and has done a lot of dumb things between those years. And then, it stops. They grew up, and that's fine. But just tell us that and explain it to us. And, we've had people be like, explain, like, why did you had an interaction and misdemeanor at 18, but then at 20 and then 24, you kept on. It's fine to say I was young and dumb. That's fine. That's a very legitimate reason. It's fine to say I had bad friends, and it took me until 25 to realize it. That's totally fine. Be honest, those are very legitimate, real reasons. And I think we can all relate to that at varying degrees. So I think if you do have a number of things, even if they've been dismissed, and even if you have a longer record, that's fine. I mean, that's why we have the criteria that as long as it's not recent, that's what we care about.
Great. So we heard all the details. If someone, what would you say to be the benefits? Like, what are the benefits of a pardon? Like, well, you spoke to it earlier, but for someone that just chimed in, like, I know that, getting your rights back is definitely part of the process, but what does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, you spoke to it earlier, like, so I'm gonna give an example. For some people, it's about getting their gun rights back. For a lot, it's a gender thing too, because Diane spoke to it earlier, or one of you spoke to it earlier, like, for some men, it's about getting their gun rights back and being able to protect themselves and their families. And then there's also for the women, being able to go into the education field or the nursing field, and then you have for the other people that want traveling grace. you know, the ability to go to Canada, the ability to go to different countries. So those are just some benefits that I can think of. Do you know of any other benefits? And then after that, you know, Anthony can speak to his experience and what he found to be the benefits.
Yeah, I think those are the main ones. I think it's, you know, job related, because there's a whole bunch of laws that just flat out, if you have a felony, you just don't qualify, whether it's different types of government assistance programs, like with small businesses on the federal level, occupational licenses. There's just a whole bunch in there. It's random. There's no, you know, I think if all of us sat in a room today and wrote what the requirements are for these occupations, they'd be more aligned. But like, for example, you know, you can't have a felony to be a realtor. You know, we talked about in order to be a registered nurse, and there's a long list of those, and that's one we hear a lot about, and that's one that can have a really big immediate impact, because all of a sudden you're going from being a CNA to an RN, and you're getting a big pay bump, just a huge pay bump, and going from a CNA to an RN.
Almost triple.
Yeah, I like that is real. That's a real world change. We do hear about people running for office, but obviously, you know, that's just some people are really interested in that. There's a lot of people, the traveling thing is a really big one, especially, you know, it's people have wanted to go to like a specific country for, you know, very personal reasons. Sometimes it's for work. We've had people who have lost jobs because they can't travel for work, or they have to go through a really embarrassing long process to be like, yes, I have a felony from this year, but this is why, and they have to just relive it over and over again. And with a pardon, you don't have to relive that over and over again. And then, you know, we talked about gun rights. It's obviously important, especially for some people with hunting or protecting themselves. But the one that really surprised me, and having watched this process and been involved in 2 years, is just, I think, the emotional component of just, I've been pardoned, and it's really like, it's sometimes we'll just see it with different people, and you never know who it is that, you know, some people have been living with this for 40 years, and all of a sudden when they get pardoned, you can just see the weight off their shoulders because of it. It's not going to impact their day-to-day life. They've been retired, but just that emotional, you know, we had one person who got pardoned probably about 3 weeks before they died from terminal cancer, and they wanted to be pardoned before they passed away. So, I mean, I think that's the one that I think people don't appreciate how much of an impact it can have. But Anthony, I'd be really interested in like what's changed for you and like what's resonated for you, because you talked a little bit about that, but.
Yeah. You know, I was just writing some other additional notes, but actually, I think one of the main things, and you kind of talked about it just a little bit, Ryan, as far as, I mean, it's the emotional piece, but then also you are basically taking off the invisible handcuffs, right? You know, even though, so I've been off of paper, you know, I think about, honestly, it was really me thinking about jobs and even applying for housing, you know, all of those things that, you know, even though, okay, hey, this is 20 years ago, this is who I was then, that all those things were things that I can be denied from, right? Easily, just based on my background. And now I think I'm still working in the areas that I'm working in. So that part I can't really speak to. I don't feel, because I feel like no matter what, I continue to keep those things going. But it is being able, the emotional weight, I think, was really big for me. There was times that where, you know, I'm married and things of that nature. I'm like, babe, I don't know how this is going to go. You know, as far as applying to buy a house, right? Different federal programs to help you in those assistant programs or whatnot. Or if we go, you know, go and rent somewhere, those were all challenges for me, right? You know, and again, you know, or heck, or even trying to get a loan to be able to, so my sons can go to college, right? Those are, again, they're invisible to everyone else until you have to check that mark on the box. Until you have to check that box, and those become bigger issues and challenges for all of us who have been incarcerated. But at the same time, I think that we're now, it kind of, again, you know, I mean, I do some traveling, and I never really, well, I haven't been to Canada, but I did hear about Canada now allowing people to come in with felonies. But it's just the whole thing, like, okay, now that's a weight that's off of me. Now I feel like I can move around how I want to, and not have to worry about, or not have to feel as though have that feeling of being rejected. That's a real thing. And honestly, if you even want to tie rejection to a mental health piece, right? You know, and so and that was something actually I just kind of made sure I wrote that down to not forget to say this to people, is that the whole thing is, please don't let the fear of rejection stop you from applying. If you hit all of those boxes that make sense for you to be able to get your partner, go for it. You have to, because even for me, even given the work that I'm in and things of that nature, I was still just kind of like, you know what, I just want to just live my life. Because at some point, especially for us who have been incarcerated, it is like kind of like, you know what, man, I'm at a standstill. I mean, not a standstill, but I'm living life. I'm okay. I have my job. I could just keep going forward. I don't want to, you know, why do I want to ruffle any feathers? Why do I want to relive that? But you, honestly, it's going to benefit your life by you doing that. And again, to what Ryan had mentioned earlier, the time is now. Because again, if Ever's not reelected, then what? And you know, we don't know what the next person is going to do, because I was always told that I would never be able to get a pardon. Right? We knew underneath Walker, because I mean, either he threw them in the garbage or they sat on his desk. We knew that they were there, right? So these are all the things that you know, that were, it was concerning to me, but I just said, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and just go for it. And the other part, I believe the question was asked as far as having an attorney. Me and my assistant, we pretty much went line by line, just making sure. And actually, one of the things I want to make sure, even so, I think it was like a form or something that I had filled out right or whatever, and they sent it back, and so I had to send it back in. Get it done. Don't look at that as being as a rejection. Get it done. Fill it out. And I'm pretty sure Chanel has all of our info. I'm not sure Ryan and Diane are how open you are to talking with everyone on a regular basis. But reach out. I mean, my email, everything. I have no problem trying to either help on the application process or trying to make sure that you're connected with someone who can help. And the wonderful thing about with Chanel, the fact that, hey, I know you're in Milwaukee. I'm not sure how far. I mean, you know, if you work with people out of Madison or any of the other surrounding areas. Beautiful cat, by the way. But you know, just to let you know that, hey, there's other people out here who are also willing to be able to support you as much as possible. Yeah, so I think that's
so you're right. I do help with I'll help anybody. I don't care really where they come from. It just so happened that I'm based here in Milwaukee, but ever since I've expanded Clean Slate throughout Wisconsin, absolutely. You know, I help people out of Racine, Kenosha, Maine, you know, mostly now. But if I get somebody from Madison or Dane County, there's no way I'm turning anybody away, especially if they're qualified. You know, whether it be an expungement or a pardon. If they qualify, I'm taking the case, because it's my mission. It's my sole purpose and mission in life is to help as many as people get through this process and get their rights back, and to feel exactly what you just expressed. You know, the relief, you know, I say it all the time, we're on a rescue mission to rescue as many people as we can from the gauze of this system, from this incarceration system. But it's bigger than that, right? It's bigger than that, because you spoke to it. It's a mental health thing. You know, it's a mental wellness thing of constant rejection. Like, you know, no one but someone who's been incarcerated knows the years or decades of rejection, especially when you know you qualify. You know what I'm saying? When you know you qualify for a position, when you know that you have the income to live in this neighborhood, or you have the smarts to go to this school, but yet you're rejected because of your record. And that record could have been 10, 15, 20, sometimes 30 years ago. You know, I can tell you the stories of clients that I talk to every single day that just wants to be done with this. You know, sometimes it's a one-time occurrence, you know, something that happened, unfortunately. And then sometimes, like you said before, Ryan, I was young and dumb. I was misguided, you know. A lot of people age out of foster care into very, very bad situations, you know. And then they have this record that's still lingering and just reminding them over and over and over again. So that's what we do, and that's what we try to do. I know we have a lot of time left, and I just wanted to see if we had some questions from some people in the audience that have not been answered. I try to stick to all the frequently asked questions that people were asking. So we know now the difference between an expungement and a pardon, that are two completely separate things, just as a recap. One is a judicial clemency, one is an executive clemency. Two different branches of government. One is the judge, one is the governor. That's the difference. And what rights are restored? You know, they talked about, you know, and Diane, if you want to chime in at any time, just let me know. They talk about the rights to restore. So once a person is convicted of a felony conviction, they lose certain rights. They lose their right to bear arms, their right to run for public office, their right to sit on jury, and their right to vote. And some unintended consequences or unforeseen consequences, you also lose your right to travel freely to different countries. And when you're discharged from probation, you get two rights back automatically. And that's your right to vote, and you get your right to sit on jury trial automatically. But what you have to apply to get the rest of the rights back, and that's called a pardon. That's the pardon application that we keep talking about. And so that's a pardon. And expungement don't give you your rights back. Expungement removes information from public view, but expungement does not give you your rights back. You literally have to go through this process that we're talking about. And so we want to make sure that people get their questions out now, because I promise we'll be bombarded with questions after this is done for anyone that is, you know, too timid or shy to ask right now. So I just wanted to make sure that we can get to some questions that we haven't got to.
Yeah, and if anyone does think of questions after this meeting is over, you can always email the partner. You can always email us in the governor's office. That address I put in the chat already.
Yes.
It's govpardons@wisconsin.gov.
Right. So if anybody that's in attendance now that, you know, can't think of what you want to ask now, then like she just said, she put in the comments right here, and you can actually save. There's a file down here at the bottom. You can actually save the comments so you can look at it again, and you'll, you know, later on in your day, if you just need to review the notes for your reference. So I just wanted to see if there's any questions. I don't see any questions. Is there a website where I can find more about expungement? Sure, there's a lot of websites, including our website, you know, cleanslatemke.org. Yeah, so we have the expungement criteria, but I will say the expungement criteria. So she spoke about the pardon criteria, but in order to be eligible, which is very different than a pardon, please understand that. In order to be eligible to have a record expunged in the state of Wisconsin, whatever happened had to have happened before your 26th birthday. So you have to be 25 years and under. You have to be off probation and or parole and have completed that successfully with no revocation. All fines, fees, restitution has to be paid back. And if it's a felony, it has to be a non-violent, non-sexually violent felony after 2009. Any felony prior to 2009 is ineligible for expungement, unless you remember the judge or your attorney stipulating it for you at the time of sentencing. It has to be stipulated at time of sentencing. Expungement is not a criminal justice issue. Expungement is a sentencing justice issue. It's something that's done and dealt with in sentencing. So if it's not a part of your sentence, chances are you would not be eligible to have that record expunged, unfortunately. Now, we are trying to fight against that with some legislation that we have currently, is actually SB 78 and AB 69. Not sure how far that's gonna go. I want to feel happy about it. I want to feel happy about it, but things are what they are, you know, in our legislature. But that's neither here nor there. So today we're talking about pardons and making sure that we can help as many people get through this pardon process as possible. And there's a lot of good resources Diane is sharing in the chat too. So like I said before, just save it. I just saved this file so you will have it for your reference later on, just in case you forget anything that we're saying today. So if anybody has anything else to add, I allotted 2 hours. I just figured that it would go about 2 hours. To say, as an RN, my record was all basically, let me say, as an RN, my record was all basically in the mid 90s. I have since then gone to college and I'm an RN of 20 plus years. Am I able to do this? If you're already an RN, you are able to do it. I don't understand. But you became an RN with a felony?
So I do want to make sure, so in a certain type of, so to my understanding, and please, Ryan and Diane, let me know if you have a different understanding of this. So you can become an RN depending on the type of felony and what is all involved in that as well, and how long it's been during that time. So I think during the time, yeah, so, and there's again, sometimes certain things come up and some things don't, depending on the type of felony that you had. That was my understanding to that. So it's not impossible, but there's hoops and things of that nature. If you have the time to be able to do that, then you can do it. Yeah, she had a drug felony. So yeah, so because there's a friend of mine she actually was in, she went to the feds for court. And I feel there's something with Wisconsin that where, you know, depending on where you're at, like say if you were in Illinois or in, I'll use Texas for instance, I think there's different hoops that you may have to go through as well, but it is possible.
And for everyone who has a question about your individual eligibility, you know, the answer, frankly, for all of you is maybe. You know, maybe you are eligible. It's impossible for us to say right now if we just have this little snapshot of information about you. So what I encourage everyone to do is get on the Evers website, you know, Google Evers pardons, and it'll take you right to the website. You can look over the criteria again that I already went over. And if you think that you meet those 4 criteria, fill out the application, get your court documents, send it all in, and we will give you the final answer as to your eligibility. That first answer comes pretty quickly. We are caught up on doing that first stage of things. So you will know relatively soon if you give us a full, complete application about your eligibility. The waiting part comes at the next stage. So you'll know basically if you're eligible and are gonna basically sit in line. But you know, just having a snippet of information about what, you know, your special circumstances might be. Unfortunately, we can't, the answer is maybe you might be eligible.
Let's just say a person had a record from, I don't know, 2003. I'm just throwing a number out there. And they've completed, everything is okay. And then they have a hiccup, they have a DUI, which is a misdemeanor after. Is that a disqualification?
Maybe. I mean, there's a couple of different factors that'll go into that determination.
Okay.
First OWI in Wisconsin is not necessarily a criminal offense. So keep in mind that, you know, in our state, we treat it as a relatively minor traffic violation, and it's not a criminal matter. So it might not actually be disqualifying. Now, if we're talking about 3rd, 4th or something OWI, then more likely it will be disqualifying. But again, this is also going to turn on the timing of the whole thing, how long, you know, after finish, if it has come after completing sentence, there's going to be a lot of factors that go into that. And so really we need the full picture of an entire applicant's materials to be able to make the accurate determination.
Someone that has a drug felony, how many years after they complete 5 is on a pardon application. It's on a pardon application. I wish I can do my screen, share my screen, so because I saved just the front of the application, because once you see the pardon application, there's no more questions because it's right on the first page.
Mhm.
It's on the first page of the application what the criteria is. You have to be done with your sentence for 5 years with no new reoccurrences, and you cannot be on the sex offender registry. It's that cut and dry. Just it, that's all. So if you meet that criteria, apply. Please apply as soon as possible. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Say something, please. So do you have is any other questions coming out of the audience? Or because you guys did a great job of answering all the questions, all 3 of you. First of all, thank you. This was a brainchild of mine that it had to be done. It had to be done. I was getting hit with so many questions that I knew the answers to, but I also wanted clarity myself, on what it was like, what to prepare for, and like how to get ready, how to get ready. There is a 13-month, like Ryan said, there's a 13-month window right now, and it's you can see and basically prep yourself once you turn in your pardon application. Tune into the YouTube. I didn't even know. I just learned that myself. That all of the cases are on YouTube now, so you can see the hearings yourself and basically, practice, so you'll know the type of questions that they're asking, so you know what they're going to ask you when you go before them as well. Is there any more questions? Anyone?
I think just with that, Shaniel, that final question from Rebecca, if a person doesn't have a felony but 3 DUIs, so I'm assuming those are misdemeanor DUIs, the pardon process is just for felonies. And the reason why we did that is because there's a lot of people, a felony just carries a lot more consequences to it in terms of loss of rights, everything that we've talked about, where you just don't have those same types of disabilities with a misdemeanor. So there are some, but it's a lot more limited. So right now we're just focused on felonies, but if you do have a felony and associated misdemeanor with it, for example, if you were, arrested and charged, your first count is a felony and your second count is a misdemeanor, we would look at pardoning both, but you have to have that felony in order to be heard before the board.
Good stuff. Very good information. Anyone else have any questions? We'll probably just wrap up a lot sooner than I thought. I just wanted to give an extra cushion time, because I expected to have a lot of questions from people. But like I said, you guys did a really good job of, okay, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, so right here on the Pardon Advisory Board, it says eligibility right here. Right here. Like Diane said, it's 4 key criteria. If you meet this, apply as soon as possible. And this is the address where you submit your application. This is the actual application here. Ask for some very, very, personal information, some information about your cases. And then just answer the questions, it's probably best to get a printable, the fill-inable application, just in case you don't have good penmanship. And it just look more professional to me when you type it in, opposed to writing the answers in. And then there's some information about your work history, and just some background information, describe education you've received since the conviction, just some letters. And then either Diane or Ryan spoke about letters of recommendation. It's not mandatory, but I always include letters of recommendation, just to get support from people around you. And like they said before, you have to get it notarized. This has to be notarized. And this is the criteria. Someone asked about a checklist. This is the checklist. Do not turn in this application without all of these being checked. Yes.
And on that note, don't forget to turn in the checklist with your application.
Right, yeah.
Sure that all of this is done, and then these are the notices. The notice to go to the judge, and like we said before in the app in the beginning of the call, beginning of the event, don't worry if that judge is not there anymore. Just take it to that branch. Don't worry if this district attorney is not the same district attorney anymore. Turn it into the district attorney's office in the same county where you were convicted. It has to go to the same courthouse.
And then also, I'll put my email in the chat as well. If someone happens to have any questions later on, and Chanel, she has all the numbers to get a hold of me, but also by email, definitely you can reach out to me as well. And then we can set up a time to chat, whether if it's FaceTime. And I'm in Milwaukee every once in a while as well. So yeah, we can go from there.
Okay. All right.
Excuse me, I just want to say one thing before we
Absolutely.
get off. It's like we're ending. So I wanted to say thank you for all the wonderful work that you're doing, and you being a community servant and just, you know, making things happen and putting this on. You know, just say I appreciate that more than you probably know, and looking forward to connecting with you more in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for being in attendance. I've always wanted to see what it was like, you know, and I tell people, like, if I was a felon, you know, I've been incarcerated, but fortunately it was reduced to a misdemeanor, thank God. But if I was a felon, I would definitely not miss an opportunity to get my rights back. There's no way. There's no way I would miss this opportunity. And now is the time. Like Ryan said, and we're going to keep on saying it, don't wait. Don't keep waiting. This is not going to be an opportunity you're going to always have. So don't take advantage of the time. If you're looking to get your rights back, now is the time. Don't keep putting it off. You have all the information you need. All the questions should be answered. Get started on this application today. Today, why not?
Thank you so much, Danielle, for organizing this.
Yep.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for being a part of it. I really appreciate you taking your time out, and I will be tuning in. The hearings, I didn't know that they were live on YouTube like that. So I'm actually slapping them on our website, cleanslatemke.org, by the way, cleanslatemke.org. I'm going to post this on there for anybody that wants to look at it in its entirety again. And also, like Ryan posted, you know, you can also go to YouTube yourself and just get a good feel of how it goes. You know, what is it like sitting before that board and get used to it, so you're not intimidated, so that your real self can flow. Just let your honesty flow out. Don't try to hide anything. This is the state. They know. Every time you say hi to the police, they know. Don't try to hide anything, please. You know, we're gonna pull that record. I pull the record. I want to know what's on there, and I want to know what I can take off. You know, so just be honest. This is the time. You know, this is the time to get right and get it past you and be done with it. So, okay, Anthony, you have any last words of wisdom for us?
I think, again, I'll just say, you know, don't allow rejection be a fear of yours. Just keep going forward. And then also you have to give it a shot, you know, and know that you got support out here in the community as well. We took, for many of us, I don't know what other people's crimes are, but we took penitentiary chances. We could take a chance for ourselves to be able to do something better for our life.
That's right.
Just what it is. So
that's right. If you live in the city of Milwaukee, you shouldn't be scared of anything. So Ryan or Diane, did you have any last words of wisdom for us?
No, just thank you, Chanel. Thanks, Anthony, for doing this. And yeah, apply right today. Worst thing that can happen is you're told no, but there's a huge upside, and most people get through. The vast majority get through the process. And then if you do have questions, again, just, you know, we put in that email address. So Diane, and then we have a pardons coordinator. So we have 2 people working on this almost full time. So just ping us. We'll get back to you. We're good at answering that email address. And I really hope everybody applies, because this is an important process for you. It's an important process for us. And it really does make a big change in our state. So take advantage of it.
Take advantage. Take advantage. All right, so we're done. Like they said, if you have any questions, any lingering questions, please feel free to reach out to directly. You can reach out to us on our website. My number is, and I guess we're done for right now.
Sounds
Bye,
good.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank
have
you.
a blessed day.
Have a
Bye-bye.
blessed day.
So as we close out this partner information session, I hope everyone got their questions answered. If not, the links are located in the chat if you still have additional questions. Would like to thank our sponsors for making this happen, American Family Insurance Institute of Social Impact, and our national sponsors, the National Expungement Week. Thank you all. Have a great day.